John Callahan was a cartoonist who was a political activist in his own crude way. He brought attention and criticism to disabilities, racism, sexism, and stigma within our culture and society. By mocking or poking fun, he brought to light the common misconceptions of people who are not experiencing disability firsthand. He challenged political correctness and brought to light the reality of being disabled. John Callahan was born on February 5th in 1951 in Portland, Oregon. This is where he spent most of his days until he died on July 24th in 2010. He's most known for being a crude cartoonist, and you may have heard of him from a feature film made about him called Don't Worry, He Won't Get Far on Foot. This is one of his most famous cartoons that he's drawn, and also a book that he wrote. In the film, he's portrayed by Joaquin Phoenix, and in the image you can see there's an abandoned wheelchair in the desert with three men on horses that say, "Don't worry, he won't get far on foot." He had a raw sense of political incorrectness with social satire. In an interview, he stated that it's a metaphor for a lot of different things, trying to point out and pick fun at patronizing statements. He's known for the publications in the Far Side and Portland's newspaper, Willamette Week, as well as other magazines and publishers such as Penthouse, New York Times, and the Chicago Tribune. In 1972, at age 21, he and a friend went out for the night. On their way back, he was sitting passenger seat while his friend drove his Volkswagen into a utility pole traveling over 90 miles per hour. This resulted in a spinal cord injury where John lost some muscle function of his upper body and he became paralyzed from the diaphragm down. He was diagnosed with a severed spinal cord at level C7. Function of his shoulders, elbows, and finger extension, as well as head and neck control remained. He can control movement of his shoulders, elbow, and wrist, and he was able to manipulate a wheelchair and regained the ability to draw again through therapeutic intervention, allowing him to hold a pen in his right hand while guiding it across the page with his left.
Tell me when. That's about one thing I can do. Let's see.
There we see John playing the harmonica as one of his hobbies, and here we can see him using his pen with both hands, as well as shaking hands with somebody and manipulating his joystick of his wheelchair. This video is a great example of social participation and getting around his community as well. As OTs, it's our role to make sure that we individualize and focus on what our clients want to participate in. John had stated to him it is important to draw, but at the same time, he says he can draw beautifully if he wants to. It's just that his cartoons don't require it necessary. Here is a character that John frequents called No Witness, and you can see he's ahead and he's blind, and he just kind of sits on a wheelboard, and you see him eat a fly, then responds with, "That's something they don't teach you in a rehabilitation hospital." Our job is to provide patient education, and we can assist with fitting or recommending assistive and adaptive equipment. After John's accident, he was still choosing to continue drinking. He stated in a personal interview that he started drinking at age 13 or 14 by consuming cough syrup, which later progressed into alcohol abuse. As an OT, we can recommend other professionals to help deal with his substance abuse, but it's also important to consider our role in his healing process as well as in mental health. While evaluating and treating, we need to recognize his past history of physical abuse, the fact that he was adopted, and his recent injury. Here we can see John describing how a psychiatrist was trying to tell him that being in a wheelchair isn't so bad. So he took patronizing statements that he's had in his real life experience and drew them into a political cartoon. With a spinal cord injury, He needed to be immobilized to allow his body to heal, yet also mourn and heal from his past and what his new life is going to entail. Our role is to collaborate with him and other professionals to encourage, motivate, and provide tools to where he can reach his maximum independence. While doing so, we need to maintain a rapport and trust while he heals both physically and mentally. John referenced this stage in his life through a cartoon drawing of him still hanging out of a car after the crash. In his drawings, he references himself as Q-Man, and so here you will see Q-Man is hanging out of the car, asking the paramedic to reach into his pocket for money so that he can go and buy him more booze. This represented a stage in his life where the best technologies couldn't save him from himself.
After I was paralyzed at 21 in yet another car accident, my driver and I were both drunk. My drinking only increased. Hey, there's a $5 bill in my left shirt pocket. Go get me a short case, would you? After my accident, I lived in nursing homes for 3 years, drinking hard and becoming more bitter.
I'm going out to round up the chickens and take them to the pizza church.
That Phil Donahue is quite a gal.
One night, my friend Jay pushed me home from a bar. Drunk, we didn't notice that my foot was dragging beneath my wheelchair. The nursing home attendants removed my shoes and discovered my toes had been nearly scraped off. I was tossed out on my ear. Moving into an apartment, my drinking only got worse. My alcoholic attendant and I drank together. I discovered I'd lost complete control of my drinking. Time after time, I'd take that first drink, knowing it would lead me to miserable drunkenness and horrendous withdrawal. One day, home, alone, and half drunk, I happened to drop my bottle. Try as I might, I simply couldn't reach the bottle. I became so upset, I began to break down. I started screaming and didn't care who heard. I was so frustrated, I began screaming at God, who I didn't even believe in. As I raved, I felt the anguish of my entire life. I cried a deep and cleansing cry like a child. At the same time, I felt strangely comforted. I rolled to the telephone and called for help. From that time till now, I have not wanted a drink. In treatment, I learned that it was alcoholism that made me drink, not my difficult life experiences.
I drank because my shoes were too tight.
I drank because I was named Corky.
I drank because I have an electric machine attached to my back, which forces me to drink.
I'm not sure what caused my alcoholism, but I think heredity played a role in it. Though I'm sober, my basic personality hasn't changed. And I've found a new way of living which really works, even in tough times.
For the next 3 years, while John continues to drink, some areas of occupations that he would focus on would be drawing, drinking, dressing, showering, transfers, toileting, and in his case, he uses catheters and a colostomy bag, so that would be maintenance and cleaning or how to use it. Socializing, his posture, skin and sore prevention or treatment, and environmental adaptations. OT's role would focus on environmental adaptations, fitting for a proper wheelchair through assessments and procurement, wheelchair use, adaptive equipment, community transition, return to work, leisure activities, social participation, as well as upper extremity strengthening, and most importantly, self-care and ADLs. Post-injury, as John ages, his needs will change as well. OT's role in mental health can be applied here throughout this process to maintain a balance within John's life. Safe care and leisure participation will impact his overall quality. In a study done by Julia Dussin, she shows how alcoholism affects perceptual motor function, which in turn affects performance of ADLs. So another study that would also describe OT's role was performed by Wanda Lindsay, as she describes the impact of alcohol use on body systems and body functions. Well, we need to understand that alcoholism is a chronic disease, OT's role is to provide supports of accepting the chronic illness and teach skills needed to maintain sobriety. We are also expected to provide additional resources for sobriety and assist in regaining or building self-worth. Once John quit drinking, his needs changed, and so did his focuses. He would later participate in other occupations such as interviews, talks, writing new books, attending AA meetings, and later, during the time of his death, he was currently enrolled in a master program for counseling. OT's roles would need to change at this point to help him with community participation, possibly driving rehab, getting around the community independently, self-care, ADLs, and now maintaining his sobriety. Some assessments that we've learned so far would be sensory tests for safety, such as hot, cold, sharp, dull, moving touch, static touch, touch localization, and touch discrimination. And these would be important for times when John is either preparing a meal or if he's independently showering, to make sure that he can differentiate the sensation so that he doesn't burn himself, as well as testing his upper extremity range of motion and muscle strength through manual muscle testing and grip and pinch. And a provocative test that could be used would be the empty can test. While I was doing my research, I found that other assistance levels can be assessed through levels of function and performance by using standardized assessments of the FIM, which is Functional Independence Measure, Quadriplegic Index of Function, Klein-Bell Scale, and the Barthel Index. John has stated that his main role has always been as a cartoonist before and after his spinal cord injury. He stated that it was through therapy that he was able to regain finger extension again in order to manipulate a pen and draw. From an early intervention, an OT is going to want to create an activity analysis on John's drawing. So if we define the activity as drawing, first we would list the steps to drawing, starting from setting up to the final creation, objects and space, which would be desks, pen or marker, and paper, the social demands of John's particular drawings allow him to perform these solo, but also he may show it to friends in a social setting, having his work printed and published. And then another social aspect would be the responses of validation or criticism from others within the community. We would take a look at body functions, which would be his cognition and thought, body structures of fine motor control, and the performance skills if he legibly draws an image. During this time, a long-term goal may have looked like John will independently manipulate a pen across paper to draw a legible picture. Short-term goals to assist in this goal would be John will independently hold a pen in his right hand and fingers for 30 seconds without it falling for the next 2 sessions. John will position a lap desk across his legs independently to allow a pad of paper to stay put for 5 days this week. John's cause of death was listed as quadriplegia and breathing issues. His stone was inscribed, "Don't worry, he won't get far on foot," as this is a legacy that will continue to live on. His cartoons, books, and life story in his major motion picture will continue to allow his views and statements to continue to impact and resonate with society today.